The Barroom Network presents two fired-up Bears fans. They are ready to rumble on the Bear Debate.
Hey, this is David Kaplan from the Cap J Hood Show on ESPN 1000 and NBC Sports Chicago. Now get ready to listen and watch to Bulls 101 with Kris and Larro. Take that, Sparkles.
What's up, Bulls fans? My name is Chris Amundsen. Welcome to Bulls 101. I'm here with my guy, Larro Golden, on this beautiful Saturday evening. And Mr. Golden, man, I know you're excited about something, but it's not really the Bulls right now. There's something you were talking to me about just before we got on. So tell me what you and our guy Salim just went and saw.
My guy, Shang-Chi. If you haven't seen it, do it. Go and see that movie. It's
No spoilers. No spoilers.
I was stuck in that chair, locked into the screen. I usually, popcorn, snacks, whatever, but I didn't want to leave. Like, I literally didn't want to leave. Comedy, action, everything that you want. Great acting, great plot. I'm happy, man. I need to see it again. It's just a great movie. Kris, you got to get there.
I'm planning on it. I have not seen it yet, but hoping to do so soon. I haven't been to the theater since before the pandemic started, probably. Yeah. So, yeah, but I'm excited to go do that. I've heard a lot of good things. So tonight the off season, we're like in the lull period of the off season, right before training camp. Everyone's roster is pretty much all set up now, and so we really wanted to bring on someone. We've talked about to a lot of different Bulls fans over the last few months now about the Bulls moves and the plans and eventually what took place here. But we wanted to talk to someone who's not a Bulls fan and who has kind of a perspective on the rest of the Eastern Conference and the rest of the NBA and is connected with a lot of different people. And so we wanted to bring on one of our good friends, Jackson Frank. He writes for a lot of different places at this point. He's got his podcast, The House That Hinkie Built, which he pumps out at an insane rate. I don't know. This man is the busiest person I've ever seen. So we want to welcome Jackson Frank. Jackson, thanks so much for coming on tonight and helping us talk about some Bulls and give us some outside perspective, which is something I think we've really needed. So how you doing and welcome.
I'm doing well. I appreciate the two having me on. I'm excited to talk about a different Eastern Conference team. As you mentioned, it's been a lot of Sixers talk the last 3 or so months. I'm excited to do a little bit of something else, a different team with a little different spirit about it after the offseason or after the dust has settled a little bit.
I'm sure the Ben Simmons thing will resolve itself any day now, right? I mean, you can only do so many podcasts on it.
I hope. I mean, for his sake, for everyone's sake, I hope that they get it resolved and he goes somewhere where he wants to play and feels invested in and whatnot. But excited to talk about the Bulls today, who are not a Ben Simmons suitor as far as you know. So.
Hey, you never know with AK, man. That dude moves in silence, man. You never know. But Jackson, I'm just happy to have you on, man. One of the nicest people on Twitter, if not the nicest. Great guy, great writer.
That's I can't take that. I'll take one of the nicest. I'll stop.
Hey, okay, all right. You know what? That's the nicest. That's good enough. But yeah, man,
we'll take our compliments. We might have to mute you if you start making protests here.
No, man, but everything Kris said, we're happy to have you on. Happy that you decided that you wanted to come on. This is just great, man. We're gonna have some fun talking some Bulls tonight, and I have to warn you that I do have some questions for you later on. So just let that marinate. But yeah, Kris, what we got going on, man?
So I wanted to be specific about where you write. First of all, as far as your bio is concerned, you write for Dime Up Rocks. You write for Basketball News, Liberty Ballers. You also have a Spotify Green Room multiple times a week, which, as I said, is nuts. You're on all of our friends here podcasts as well. So, yeah. And according to Salim, the best mustache.
I'll take that. I'll take that superlative. I won't take the nicest superlative. I'll take the best mustache.
You've got competition from some people.
The analysts as well. Been doing some freelance work for them. It's kind of I think it might be a unique place, but they do some really good work. Graphics wise, stats wise, it's been fun. But yeah, I'm in a lot of different places doing written, audio, all that sort of thing about the NBA all the time, basically.
If you don't mind me asking, what's a goal that you have for this upcoming year as far as your NBA coverage?
Yeah, I've talked with a couple of places, with a couple editors, places I freelance, just kind of trying to figure out what exactly I want to improve on and what I want to do. And I would say that I feel pretty confident in my long form analysis type of stuff. That's what I've been doing for years now. But I want to get a little more comfortable with kind of the reactionary stuff, the quick hitting things. A big trade happens or a guy has a big night or a team is going on a winning streak. I want to be able to kind of write an article about that, maybe in a concise manner. It doesn't take me, not like I don't think I'm inefficient in my work when it comes to these long form things, but something that doesn't require that sort of, a trade happens and then an hour and a half later I've got 800 words on it. It's up and people can consume it. I want to try and do even more feature stuff this year. I've done a little bit of it over the past year. I had the Mikal Bridges one in the spring, done a couple other things with the Sixers. But those are kind of my two biggest things is have a little more diversity because I think, I think I'm good at a lot of different things, but just, what I've done over the last year and kind of what my freelance opportunities have allowed has been more of that long form analysis, film breakdown stuff, which I really enjoy. But I think as I try and, find myself in one home, maybe by the end of this next season, having kind of a diverse skill set and showing that off to prospective employers would be good because I know I can do it. But, my word doesn't necessarily mean as much as the actual bylines that have that kind of diverse content out there. That's kind of my big goal is to have a little more wide range in NBA content this year in terms of kind of the style of it and delivery. Yeah.
To go along with that question, I guess something that I wanted to know about you is what do you like to do more? Are you more in terms of, like you said, that long form writing there, but do you love the draft analysis, or do you want to kind of stray away from that and continue to do what you've been doing recently in terms of NBA guys already in the NBA, just kind of breaking down their games? Is draft coverage something that you want to continue to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would love to continue if possible. Just the biggest issue is there's just not as large a market for freelance NBA draft writing. I mean, I did more of it in college when my main thing was getting a degree. and I had some other things that were bringing me income. But once I graduated, I found it tougher to make sure I could sustain myself on NBA draft content. So I like doing it, and I still kind of want to dabble as much as possible. But I also am aware that like trying to have 1 foot in draft content delivers a lot of insufficient content at the same time. I think if you just have such a kind of a half picture of things, of a prospect or a team context or developmental context, it leads to just, I wouldn't say faulty, but just not the top of the class in terms of, or the top, kind of the cream of the crop when it comes to draft content. So I love to do it if possible. I think it's a really, really fascinating area of content, but it just hasn't really been sustainable for me as I kind of make this my living and kind of what I sustain myself on. But I would love to if it was possible. It just hasn't quite been as possible for me, but I really do find it fascinating and kind of watching guys through multiple years and multiple contexts, and kind of figuring out the projection beyond just, okay, what's this guy do well, what's he do poorly, and maybe why did he do them that way, and kind of what does it mean, and kind of trying to establish a hierarchy for skills, because not every skill is as valuable as the other, right? I mean, a guy can be a great offensive rebounder, that's really fun, but the guy who can go create 14 shots a game for himself out of pick and rolls or isolations is going to have a lot more value, even if they're both a 9.5 in those individual skills. So long-winded way of saying I would love to keep doing it, but just hasn't really been available to me as much, given kind of how the freelance market shakes out. But I'm not at all disappointed about it. I'm really happy to be doing what I do. So
I mean, I know I'm not disappointed in your work. You just put out an article on Jordan Poole this week, which I know you've been kind of teasing for days in advance. So I've lived
that's little clips. Right? You gotta get people intrigued. I can't remember who it was. I think it might have actually been Matt Moore a few years ago who talked about that, about kind of building interest in an article and teasing it a little bit. And I've tried to kind of take that to heart and kind of do that. So I absolutely kind of try to build it up. And at the same time, it was like I was just watching him. He does all these fun things. I can't help it. For every one, for every one clip I was posting out there were 6 or 7 that I was taking a note of or just saving on my hard drive that maybe didn't even see the light of day in that piece. But he was a fun player. But that's kind of always my goal, is to build intrigue so people are interested in reading it and getting my full thoughts. So.
Yeah. So anyone who's listening or watching, definitely go check that out on Jordan Poole. And also you had an article for The Analyst on Lonzo Ball. It's a couple months ago now, but I really enjoyed that because it was something that Larro and I had talked about and in depth in kind of our own personal conversations about how Lonzo Ball would fit on this team. And obviously at the time it was not on our team, and he now is. And so I think we're going to see a lot of that come to fruition this year. But, a lot of your article focused on the 3-and-D skills that he had shown and the kind of the deficiencies that had placed him into that role in New Orleans, and also, some of the things that he may be able to improve upon and do here. So I know we'll get into those specific things, which I'm really excited about. But I just wanted to, first of all, just get you kind of your overall take of over the last year and change now. Arturas Karnisovas was hired, I think, in late April last year. From that point, he didn't do a whole lot except draft Patrick Williams and sign Garrett Temple at the start of last season. But since March 25th, the trade deadline until now, it's been chaos for the Bulls roster. And the only 2 remaining players on the roster at this point are Kobe White and Zach LaVine. So I just want to kind of get your overall take of what it's been like as an outsider to watch what the Bulls have been doing, and does it make any sense to you as far as the direction or anything like that?
I've really been a big fan of it. I think a lot of times the idea about inaction to maybe hope for something long term doesn't work out. There's absolutely a chance that the Bulls are a team who maybe are stuck in that 4 to 7 seed range for a while, and they don't want a playoff series. But I like what they've done to try at least change things. They know that Zach LaVine has become a very, very excellent player, and he has 1 year left on his contract. And so going out and trading for Nikola Vucevic, trading a young guy Wendell Carter, who had shown some really, really good flashes, but had been either injured or disappointing in some regards, but particularly on offense with lack of aggression. I like going for an all-star caliber big man to pair with Zach, who I think we didn't get to see a ton of it last year. I know Zach, it was a bummer to see that we didn't really get that connection. I know Zach dealt with COVID for a while, had an ankle sprain, but I like that a lot. I I like going and getting a guy like Lonzo Ball who really does fit well offensively. And you have two offensive pillars now in Vooch and Levine. And even three now that you get to, I know Lonzo came first, but DeMar is there as well. I'm sure those two signings or additions were working in tandem, right? Like they signed Lonzo and they figured we want to go get DeMar as well. So I like that a lot offensively. DeMar, and I know he's a little bit of a contentious player. I think he's still roughly an above average starter, which is a very, very good thing to have. There's only 74 players in the NBA who can qualify as an above average starter in a given year. I think DeMar still qualifies as that. I wouldn't say he's like a fringe all-star guy that maybe he was for a while in Toronto. You can discuss exactly how you feel about him during that time, but I've liked that they've gone for it. I think I get it. I get some of the hesitancies, but I think it was like and I know we've talked about it a lot, and like cap space can be overrated, and draft picks can be overrated to an extent. But I also like that the Bulls recouped one or two draft picks in a recent trade. I can't remember which one it was, but they got something in the Lowry deal, right? They got one or two picks, and so I kind of liked that. There's clearly been a vision, and it's all of it's been connected over the long term. Obviously, they didn't expect to necessarily get DeMar and Lonzo when they traded for Vooch, but it worked out well. So I don't know if it's going to pan out ideally as they'd want, which would be maybe at least a team that can win a playoff series, which is a really, really high honor to get. To be one of the last 8 teams remaining in a given year is for most franchises is a big accomplishment. So I think the Bulls have a ceiling that is that. I don't know if they're going to reach it, but I like what they've done trying to go for it. Levine's in his prime. You have to show commitment to winning with him. You don't want to lose him. So I've liked it. I think, you can, we'll get into more some of the criticisms that maybe I can talk about, but generally speaking, I've liked what they've done. And I think showing a commitment to a guy in Levine who clearly works really, really hard and has gotten better every year in one or more facets makes sense. It's kind of what you need. It's what you need to do as a front office. You need to show commitment to him. And so I get some criticism, but I really do like what they've done over the last 6 months.
So we can't forget about Mr. Caruso, right? And when I read your piece, I reread it. I read it when it first came out, but I refreshed my memory on the piece. And something that you talked about in that article was the point of attack defense with Lonzo and how it could be clunky and hard for him to get around those screens. And you want him to be more off ball, right? Where, like you said, his intelligence pops off the screen and he's able to read passing lanes and get out and start the break, hit aheads. So adding Caruso, I feel like was huge, right? Because like Kris has said, he's like Caruso. What was he like? 99th percentile in terms of point of attack defense.
Yeah, for defensive EPM and the Basketball Index, all their stats have him ranked as like one of the top 5 point of attack defenders in the NBA.
And that's reinforced by the film. You just
yeah.
I've been watching some Lakers stuff for another piece that I'm writing, and Caruso is I just keep like, God, I'm like, God, this guy's awesome. Anyhow,
yeah.
But I just want to point out that sometimes people are like, you can you use these metrics as like maybe a fallback, but it's all reinforced by the film. Caruso's 6'5", he's strong, he's good laterally, he fights over screens, he's phenomenal at the point of attack. He had a case as an all defensive guy last year. I know he didn't play quite enough as you'd want. I don't think he was as good as a guy like Matisse Thybulle, who played kind of a similar role in terms of in the hierarchy of the rotation on a team. But he's awesome. I didn't want to cut you off too much.
No. I Jackson, I love hearing you speak, bro. Okay, so it's totally fine. But no. So my point being was and to talk about the film. That's another thing, right? It's he only played that well because he had LeBron and AD. And don't get me wrong, that can give you a little bit of confidence to be aggressive and get do all that good stuff. But I think, like you said, the film, right? You look at the film, you look at the technique, you look at how he gets skinny around screens and how he doesn't just give up on plays. He gets right back into your into the offensive player that he's guarding, and he closes space really well, right? So that's stuff that AD and LeBron don't do for you, right? So that's himself, his skill that he brings to the team. So I guess my long-winded question is I feel like in your article, Is this a good fit for him both offensively and defensively, meaning Alonzo?
For Lonzo, yeah, I think I would love if the Bulls had one more really good point of attack defender. I think a guy like Troy Brown can do that in spurts, but obviously he has his own shortcomings that will prevent him from being a 30 minutes per game guy. But I think if you can at least put Lonzo on the second best option in most lineups, that makes a lot more sense because, like, besides Najee Marshall last year for New Orleans, and I may be forgetting, I think Kyra Lewis was pretty solid at times, but he was up and down the rotation, and Najee was also kind of a middle of the rotation guy, and he didn't even emerge until midseason. Right. They didn't really have anyone else, and so they had to play him a ton. And quite frankly, Steven Adams was not very good defensively last year. Some of it was because of New Orleans' poor point of attack defense, but some of it was because of his own limitations, and that made Lonzo look worse. And Brandon Ingram isn't a good off-ball defender. Zion got better last year, but still wasn't good by any stretch. And so I think there are absolutely concerns, with the Bulls' defensive roster. Levine's gotten better, but he's still a guy you have some concerns with. Vooch, I think, is a fairly polarizing defender, but at the very least, he's not a defensive anchor, right? He's not in the top 5 or 6 defensive centers for starters. DeMar has a lot of issues on and off the ball. I like DeMar a lot, but I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge those limitations and some of the frustrations he brings about when you watch him. But so I think there's a lot to like about Lonzo's fit, but I do worry in some lineups he will be pressed into those on-ball duties a little much. But offensively, I really do like what he brings. I mean, the fact that he will be able to play off of Levine getting doubled, off of pick and rolls, Vooch getting doubled in the post, DeMar, in that mid-range, that mid-post area as well, make things happen because Lonzo is really good when the defense is in rotation. Because he's such a smart and quick and decisive player. So I like that fit a lot, but I do worry a little bit defensively at times. I think, if Stanley Johnson can crack the rotation, that would be cool as well. I know he's kind of I don't know exactly the contract he got. I can't remember for the training camp deal, but I like his point of attack defense as well. I like Troy Brown. Yeah. So I have some hesitancies, but I do think there are some paths where Lonzo is playing largely his optimal role, but an optimal role is really hard to find in the NBA for basically any player, but especially guys who are starting caliber. I think Lonzo is, I don't know exactly where he'd rank, but I would have him in my top 150. I'm not going to indulge that exercise. Right. It seems fruitless, but I think he's a starting caliber player, and the point being is it's hard to find the 100th percentile optimal role for those sorts of guys because generally they're supposed to make things easier for the remaining 300 players that are in the NBA at a given time.
Yeah, I think those are all fair points and things that Larro and I have touched on in the past. Some of Lonzo's individual limitations on the ball, as kind of the role he was forced into in New Orleans, that definitely didn't help. But with the personnel we have here with Alex Caruso, with Patrick Williams, who are both, well, for Lonzo and Pat, I think having them be off ball or in help is optimal for them. And, with lineups with Caruso, you can have Caruso take the on-ball assignment. You mentioned Troy Brown Jr. Troy Brown Jr. had showed some flashes last year of some great on-ball defense. And he can guard down from 3 to 2 to 1, I think pretty effectively. As you mentioned, he's got some other shortcomings that he needs to improve upon in order to garner enough minutes to justify having him on the floor. We're cooking with some gas there. I think is a really good rotation wing on this team. Yeah. So there's definitely some questions on the defensive end. We've got a lot of guys who, as you mentioned, the really bad defender on the team is DeMar DeRozan. Both on and off the ball, he's never been very engaged or very. I don't know what it is. He's clearly athletic enough.
That's what it is. It's a bummer above everything else.
Yeah. But Zach has made some great strides. I know I put you in an unfortunate exercise in a DM a couple weeks ago. Have you rank a bunch of shooting guards in the league by defense? But Zach ended up faring pretty well in that exercise, I thought, and that was something that I had thought. I was like, I think Zach LaVine might actually be kind of at the top end here of comparable shooting guards in the league on the defensive end, and I don't think I could say that a year and a half ago. 2 years ago. He's really, really cut down on the defensive mistakes, getting back cut. I watched some. I've seen some clips. I've seen some bad things, but those were few and far between this year. And I think Zach with more perimeter defense around him, with Lonzo, with Caruso, with Troy Brown Jr., that's going to take some of that burden off of him. Yeah, and he can be more effective. One of the things that Larry and I talked about, I wanted to ask you about, because we're Bulls fans. So we're willing to talk ourselves into anything.
That's what fandom is about. I kind of miss that part of NBA fandom a little bit, but I do with baseball. The Giants won the World Series this year. The best record. I'm talk myself into that. The Niners, though, won like 4 games last year. They're making the playoffs this year. I'll talk about that. But anyway,
exactly.
Let's get back to the Bulls here.
So one of the things that we had discussed was, opposing offenses are going to try and put DeMar and Zach into pick and rolls. They're going to try and target them specifically because they seem to be kind of the weak links there. But Larry and I were talking about having Zach LaVine be maybe your point of attack defender in that starting lineup. So the starting lineup being Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Patrick Williams, Nikola Vucevic would be your starting 5. There's not really a great on-ball defender in that lineup. Lonzo's a great help defender. I think Patrick at the 4 is going to be in much better position to take advantage of his potential strengths on defense. But having Zach be your point of attack defender puts those two in better help position. And but I don't know if maybe being Larro just crazy here, but my other concern is get DeMar and LaVine staggered as much as possible in lineups. Have DeMar or Zach run with bench units, because then you can bring in Caruso, and if you can play Caruso 25 plus minutes a night, you can mitigate a lot of the concerns on the perimeter, I think. And Troy Brown, if you can get him another 15 or 20 minutes. So what do you think about those solutions, like having Zach on ball as an on-ball defender in that starting lineup, and then staggering those lineups between Zach and DeMar? Yeah,
I think what Zach's best trait is that on-ball defense. Whether it's ISO, he's even improved screen navigation. Still has a good bit to go in terms of navigating screens, but one-on-one, he's pretty solid. And so I think there are times where LaVine and Caruso could be your 2 best defenders, and Lonzo could do his roaming. There's generally speaking, most teams aren't going to have 3 really, really effective on-ball creators on the floor at any given time. Unless you're playing the Nets, but you don't take concern of the Nets from a playoff perspective, right? They're not that good. But so I think there's some that makes sense there. And I also like the idea of staggering DeMar and Zach, not just defensively, but offensively too, because I think there are some diminishing returns with them. Zach is a very good off-ball player, but he's also become a fantastic on-ball player with his leap last year, whether it's the pull-up shooting, the driving. I think his free throw was a little better last year. It could be fibbing that, but DeMar just isn't a very good off-ball player. It's kind of similar to defense, where he just hasn't really shown a lot of engagement. You can scale him in certain ways because he's a pretty good post facilitator. Mm-hmm. But I like the idea of running him with some bench units. The shooting will be pretty murky. There's not a ton of shooting off the bench beyond Kobe at this point. And whenever he comes back, hopefully he comes back quickly and everything works out well for him, because I think he could be a really nice player on this team. Yeah, with a smaller creation workload. But I like that offensively too, because I think there's some diminishing returns. I think Zach absolutely is kind of still the offensive engine of this team, and that's largely what DeMar has been for his career, or at least just on the ball. You could say Lowry was a more impactful offensive player during their time in Toronto, and I would agree, but Lowry is one of the best non-Steph off-ball guards for the last 6-7 years, and Zach is good, but he's not at that level. And so I just kind of wonder about that, but I like the idea there. I like kind of staggering them and letting DeMar cook with some bench units, letting Zach cook with bench units. So, and then obviously, defensively, we already mentioned kind of their respective limitations. I think Zach's improved in a lot of ways. He still is prone to, he still loves to help from that strong side. I don't know if it's a team thing, but it does frustrate me at times. It's like you just stay home, get it up in the paint. DeMar, not so much. DeMar is less helping and just being in no man's land, which is that can be a cliche, but it really is the case with DeMar a lot. He tends to float off the ball on offense and generally speaking defensively. So I don't think necessarily you're talking yourself into anything that's unreasonable. I don't know if it's going to happen. I like the Bulls in certain regards, but I do still have hesitancies. As much of an upgrade as Billy Donovan was from Jim Boylan, I wouldn't call him a above average coach, respective to the rest of the league. And so I do worry that if this was a team coached by like Terry Stotts, I know Terry Stotts in the league for right now, and I know he has his own limitations, but Terry Stotts is a guy that's probably in that 12 to 15 range. If they were coached by him, I would feel a little more comfortable. Yeah. Maybe not defensively, but if they're coached by someone that I felt very confident in as being an above average coach, or at the very least an average coach, I would be a little more bigger proponent of the Bulls, because I do think there are some pretty important rotational and schematic decisions they have to make. And I just don't know if Billy is the guy for that. But I don't think either of you are being overly rosy with your projection. I think there are absolutely pathways to what you've laid out that come to fruition, and it works out for this Bulls team.
To touch back on the defense for a second, something that I was thinking about is, do you think the Bulls should think about moving towards more of icing and pushing pick and rolls when you have I know Zach has gotten better with navigating screens, but if you can kind of have him and whenever Lonzo is on the ball, just kind of icing pick and rolls and pushing them. Do you think that that's something they should add in schematically on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I think so. I think in my Lonzo article, I did point out that he's best in pick and rolls when he's icing things, because he's so strong and smart. He knows any pick and roll coverage is really hard, but icing especially, you have to find the perfect balance to not just provide an absolute runway and reject a screen, so he can still get in front of it laterally. And that's kind of Lonzo's forte, right? He knows how to do things. He's just limited in a lot of regards physically. So, but he's 6'6" and smart, and so I think icing makes a lot of sense. Just based on the film I've seen, I think that's his best. He executes pick and roll coverage the best in that scheme. So it makes sense. And the Bulls are a ginormous team. Not ginormous, backcourt wise, having Lonzo and Levine 6'5", 6'6", Caruso's 6'4"-ish and super strong. Kobe isn't super strong, but he is still fairly tall. I know he's got a little bit he doesn't have a ton of length, but you don't have a lot of small guys on this team, right? You don't have any 6'1", 6 foot guys who are going to be in the rotation for the most part, unless somehow Devon Dotson, looks really, really good. And even he's a good defender, so that really wouldn't really matter. So I think that's absolutely something they should work toward, and that's part of my hesitancy, right? With I don't know if that's something Billy is going to do, right? It makes sense. We can talk about it, but also we don't know. We don't know what Zach is comfortable with. We don't know what Vooch is comfortable with. What does Pat want? All these different things. What does DeMar like? And so that's not going to let Billy off the hook. But I think it's so important to kind of realize we can all talk about these things, and maybe it doesn't play out because that's not what the personnel is comfortable with, even what they're good at. Right? At the end of the day, players are going to do what they're comfortable with. So I like that suggestion a lot, and I think it makes sense. But I just do kind of worry that maybe Billy isn't the most imaginative coach. But I don't think it's asking too much of him, right? I mean, I think if you've watched enough of Lonzo's film, which you would hope that the front office and the coaching staff have done, you'd realize that there are going to be lineups where he's going to be your premier on-ball defender, and in that case, he is best suited to run, push, or ice. So I like that suggestion a lot. I think it's absolutely a feasible thing for the coaching staff to implement.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned the length, the height on the team. Our shortest person is listed at 6'5". It's just Kobe White. I think he may be 6'4", and Cruz is kind of right in that range too. But Vooch is really he's really the player that limits you defensively as far as what kind of schemes you can play, because he's not really super agile. So Larry and I have talked about it. Playing the drop defense is going to be the base scheme with this team as long as Vooch is here. And Tony Bradley, I know Tony Bradley a little more extensively than we do, but I think he's got some potential there, and he can step in and play drop pretty effectively as well. But as you said, that push or ice, also just being more willing to run a switching scheme 1 through 4, because all these guys are 6'5" to 6'8" between Caruso and Pat Williams as the tallest person on the roster besides Vooch, which that's another problem is the lack of true power forwards here. But they're with everyone's limitation, I think the only real person that has a limitation there is DeMar, but he's still fairly long and tall, so they may employ some switching. But one of the things I wanted to ask you, and one of the things that's frustrated, I think, Bulls fans a lot is Bulls fans, Bulls analysts, Bulls beat writers for the team, everything. Everyone has been really, really excited about this team and the changes that have been made. And maybe it's just the fact that we had Garpax before, which was like a bottom 3 front office in the NBA the last few years. I know, the Knicks and Sacramento are always trying to vie for that top spot there. But
the Knicks are trying to get out of there, though. The Knicks have done some good things as well.
They've done some good things. I think McNair in Sacramento is well, you never know. It's sometimes there's like a year where like, hey, Sacramento's turning that corner, and then they turn a little too far and go right back to where they were. So and then the Suns have put it together with James Jones. So, but the question I want to ask is there seems to be a huge discrepancy between what Bulls people think about the team and the concerns that they have versus what kind of the national media in general. Now, a lot of these guys are ESPN guys who haven't really watched more than 5 Bulls games in the last few years anyway. But you hear a lot of concerns. So I kind of wanted to run through each of these concerns and see if there's a discrepancy, and if so, why you think that is, or what perspective you can provide for these other things. So the first one is the offensive fit of DeMar DeRozan with Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic. So the concerns that have been raised by national media is there's only one ball, and you really want the ball in LaVine's hands, and DeMar can't really play off ball. Now DeMar, I think, and so Bulls fans are like, okay, DeMar, yeah, there's some concerns of him playing off ball. He doesn't do it, as you said, Jackson, he kind of floats a lot, but we've been wanting LaVine off ball for years. We've been begging to have a primary creator. And one of the things that the Bulls lacked specifically last year was rim pressure and getting to the free throw line in general. Both things that DeMar DeRozan really, really excels at. And he also has a very, very low turnover rate. That was another thing that the Bulls really stunk at, especially live. I can't tell you how many times Zach and Kobe would just dribble the ball off their own foot with no one's even guarding them. They're just dribbling the ball off their own foot. Like little mental mistakes that lead to live turnovers. DeMar fits really well in addressing those problems. And Zach LaVine off ball, to us as Bulls fans, seems like that's a great option. And you can't ask Zach LaVine to run 50 pick and rolls, 60 pick and rolls a game. You need someone else to take that role on. And so for Bulls fans, we think it's a really good fit. Like DeMar, as far as the people that were on the market, other than maybe Kyle Lowry, I couldn't think of someone who would fit better with what the Bulls needed in an offensive creator and in addressing some of those concerns. But the national media seem to think that there's a big concern there with how they'll fit together. So I wanted to see, I know it's a really long-winded question, but I wanted to see your take on their offensive fit and some, why there's a discrepancy there between what the Bulls fans think and what national media think.
Yeah, so I think, it has to be revolve around DeMar. Like Vooch and LaVine will be an awesome 2-man game once they get things right. But like I said earlier, like we didn't really get to see a ton of it last year because LaVine had an injury, and then he was also out for a little while with COVID. So I think I get some of it, but I haven't consumed a ton of the national media. But I think it can absolutely be something that gets overly scrutinized. There's a tendency, and I'm guilty of things, when you interpret something in a positive or negative light, you tend to harp on that too much. And so I get it, but I think the ability to have 2 of those guys on the floor at all times is really, really useful. The ability to simplify Kobe White's game. I mean, you two know more than mostly anyone else. Like Kobe's at his best when he's a spot-up shooter and off-ball player. Pretty much all of his giant scoring explosions have either come because he's gotten hot off the dribble or he's hit a bunch of spot-up threes. And so now that you have 3 players that can take the ball out of his hands and let Kobe run that off-ball game, like I'm not saying that Kobe is the biggest thing here, but getting something out of your seventh pick from 2 years ago, because like Kobe's had some really exciting moments, but quite frankly, he hasn't been a very good NBA player through 2 years. Finding the infrastructure offensively to make it work with him matters. Like that's like we mentioned the lack of bench shooting. He's going to be a bench guard. And he's going to provide shooting, and so that matters. I think. So I get the hesitancy, but I think it can definitely be way too magnified. Like I have some concerns. Like I think at times you will have diminishing returns among those three because of DeMar's apathy off the ball and inability to space the floor, or at least take a lot of threes. But at the same time, I'm trying to think like I don't think there's ever been a team where DeMar has been definitively the third best offensive player. I don't know exactly when Jonas Valanciunas became really, really good in Toronto. I always thought Larro was a better player, even if he didn't commandeer as many on-ball possessions. But obviously, DeMar wasn't with the Kawhi team. So, and then when he got to San Antonio, LaMarcus was good for a little while, but he wasn't. But then he kind of deteriorated or fell off. And there was a lot of young guys, or Derek White's good, but he's not a better offensive player than DeMar. So that's not me saying that all of a sudden DeMar is going to be a good off-ball player, but I do wonder if this fairly new context for him changes a little bit of things. And I guess you could point to like a lack of flexibility with regard to his three-point shooting, but this is all to say like I think it's overly scrutinized. I think you can have some concerns about the starting lineup, but like starting lineups don't play together for like 39 minutes a game. They play together for 15, 20 minutes, then you mix and match. I mean, every coaching staff is different, but generally the first sub comes anywhere from the 7-minute mark to the 5-minute mark of that first quarter, and then you're in a new context, right? So I think DeMar will help there a lot because Levine could only play 37 minutes. Only 37 minutes a night. But now you're gonna have some player out there, or some 2-man game out there, whether it's DeMar and Levine, DeMar and Vooch and Levine, that can buoy the offense in a way that you didn't have last year, because even before that, I don't really want to go back farther because Zach was a different player before last year to an extent, just in terms of the efficiency he offered as a primary creator, a premier one at that. So I get the tendencies, but I do think it is something that is it's missing the forest for the trees, right? Like you can have some reservations, but I don't think you can be too down on it, because you're going from, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Kobe basically the secondary creator last year on that team? And now it's Vooch / DeMar. Perimeter wise, it's DeMar, and DeMar has his own frustrations, but he is a much, much better creator than Kobe is. So I don't really buy that as a reason to be really, really down on the Bulls. I think you can make it something like my tier right now is kind of that. It's Boston, Indiana, New York, Chicago, I think, are my 4 teams in that tier. I could be missing one team. You could make that as a reason that maybe you have Chicago lower than someone, but like it can't be the reason that you think Chicago is missing the playoffs or being a play-in team. I just think that you're I guess 7 is a play-in team, but it can't be like I just think you're really, really getting way too bogged down in some of the limitations and not focused on the upgrades, because it's about like how does DeMar improve from his predecessor in that role, right? And he's much better than Kobe. So that's kind of how I view things. Kind of long-winded, but I generally don't buy that as a foremost concern. I think it's something to kind of you be encouraged what the Bulls have done, and then you get down to the nitty-gritty of it. And so that's how I view things.
Something that I've talked about before in here is basically a lot of the games last year with the Bulls. There were so many games lost within like the last 5 minutes of the ball game, just because Zach may be doing a heck of a job of not turning the ball over like the first 3 quarters and into the fourth, and then when pressure ratcheted up, it's almost like the turnovers started to come. And the reason why I've been so happy about the signing of DeMar is I think that he's going to be someone that you can give that ball to at the end of games to get into sets and move Zach off ball, more spacing. And that's the other thing too. I don't think DeMar, I don't want to, put hyperbole out there, but I don't think DeMar's been a part of a team that's going to maybe provide this much spacing. I'm trying to think, like, I don't know, but like I just feel like this is something where, like you said, you brought up the fact of he's never been like the third best, player really. So I'm very interested to see if this is something that he kind of takes, and tries to be the best at it. And I guess what I'm trying to say, like I've listened to his his podcast appearances, and he's very motivated to do well with this team. And I just hope that he takes that on the head and really tries to dominate this role. And I want to see, like you said, I want to see some more, some better actions. Maybe put him in some actions to get him moving when he doesn't have the ball. But I don't know. It's funny that you brought up Billy and how he's someone that you don't trust to really do the schematic game planning that you need. But his whole shtick is like putting players in the best position to be themselves and their strengths and things like that. So it's just funny that that he needs to get better at that. But that's something he loves to talk about. But I just wanted to touch on that point of basically saying that, like, I really like the fact of DeMar being here for those end of game situations, being able to, get these guys in the right spots and really attack a defense and get the defense moving.
So one of the things I wanted to touch on, piggybacking off you, Larro, was Zach was always keyed. I mean, defenses were always keyed in on Zach because there was really no other option. And although he had lots of clutch points, the efficiency was less than you would hope for in the fourth quarter. And whereas DeMar with a lot less spacing around him in San Antonio, the last 2 years has been the most efficient clutch player in the NBA. His efficiency, not only because he's just very, very good in the mid-range and the mid-post, but he also draws shooting fouls at like the 99th percentile in the league, and especially in the clutch. So having someone that has that kind of gravity on ball takes some responsibility off Levine, takes it off Vucevic. But in that starting lineup, the worst shooter in the starting lineup as far as their 3-point percentage is Lonzo Ball at 37.8% last season. Patrick Williams shot at 39%, Vooch 40%, Zach almost 42%. And so I think DeMar's going to be able to, as an off-ball player, if they're running that lineup and he doesn't have the ball in his hand, he's going to have some space to cut, maybe put him in the dunker spot, maybe have him coming up and setting ball screens for Zach or for Lonzo, whoever's got the ball. So I think but as you mentioned, there's some diminishing returns there with DeMar, but I think in crunch time, it's going to be a boon for Zach and his efficiency. I don't know how Zach could have gotten more efficient last year than he was. Like, he was like him and unanimous 2016 MVP Steph Curry as far as the amount of threes taken and points and assists and that the type of efficiency. But I think the clutch is where it showed. The turnovers were a lot higher in the clutch, and his efficiency went down a lot in the clutch because there really wasn't another option there for him. So I'm hoping that DeMar will be overall, as you said, he's kind of an average, above average starter. But I think this team, he fits really well offensively as a half-court creator, getting to the free throw line, putting that rim pressure on the defense, which is something we really lacked last year. The next one we wanted to talk about was, let's see. Sorry, I'm going through my list here. The defense in general. The defense in general has been a concern. So I've heard several people say that they expect the defense to be in the bottom 5 in the league, which blows my mind a little bit because we were 12th in the league last year with 0 point of attack defenders on the team. And we were actually 8th in defense after the Vooch trade. And we just brought in Ball and Caruso, who are, upgrades to their predecessors, Satoransky and Garrett Temple on the wing, on the perimeter. Obviously, we lost Thaddeus Young and we lost Daniel Tice in the front court. Thad was really, really important the first half of the year. Wendell Carter was a great defender. Actually, he was very, very underrated on the Bulls as an actual pick and roll defender, big. And Thad was also really good for us. Once Vooch got here, Thad's role changed a lot, and I think his effectiveness on both ends was much diminished. Tice helped with that. They started Tice at the 4, which is what they had to do. I guess, and they put Lowry at the 3 sometimes, and Patrick Williams at the 3, which is really, really wild.
That 2019 26ers 5 guard.
Exactly.
Bias and Ben all starting in the lineup with
the jumbo lineup. So we went from a glut of power forwards to now only Patrick Williams is a power forward basically, and Alize Johnson has kind of come in as hopefully a backup power forward for us, and Derek Jones Jr. in some spurts. But the defense, I thought we kind of swapped. We went from a front court heavy defense where we really lacked point of attack. We just could not stop anybody from getting into the paint. To this year, I think we'll have the opposite problem. I think our perimeter defense is going to be much improved. But the concern is going to be more for the rim protection. Now, Vooch is actually a fairly good interior defender. If you watch the film and the numbers, as you said, Jackson, he's been a point of contention for a lot of people. He's not, as you said, he's not like a top defender on the interior. He's not a rim protector, I think, in any sense of the word. Like that's not his strength is rim protection, but he is a big body. He is in the right spots most of the time. So he prevents a lot of people.
Rebounder too, which matters.
Yes, he is.
You have to end you have to end possession right with a rebound. So I think that's actually something that goes underrated at times.
Yeah, I think that the optimism that Bulls fans have talked themselves into as far as the front court defense is concerned is Patrick Williams as a help defender and secondary rim protector at the 4, which he was not really able to do a lot last year because we had no small forwards on the roster except for Otto Porter, who he was like an intern on the roster, right? He was a part-time player. Yeah. I would love his hourly rate personally, the amount of work he put in for me. But yeah, so the concern, the hope here is that Vucevic will be able to, with better perimeter defenders, will have to deal with a lot less than he did last year. And with Patrick Williams and hopefully Alize Johnson and Derek Jones Jr. that can play some 4 rotation minutes, that they can kind of shore that up. But I wanted to see what you thought of the defense in general after I've given you this long, novel on what we think of the defense and what Bulls fans in general have. What do you think of the defense, and where are the concerns for you, and where do you think they're overblown? Where do you think they're maybe not concerned enough?
Yeah, so I want to start out by saying I think the idea that they're going to be bottom 5 is pretty ridiculous because
thank you.
I just sorted through the last 3 years on NBA.com. Like the worst teams in the NBA largely are the ones who finish near the bottom because they can't score enough, and then they produce transition opportunities for the opposition. And transition offense is just always much more efficient. You can have a great the cliche in football, right, is that like a good offense is a good defense or whatever. I butchered it, but like that is absolutely applicable in basketball. If the team has to take the ball out of the basket and you can set your defense, get your preferred assignments, you're going to prevent the team from scoring as much. And so really the only last 3 years a team that's been above 500 or close to 500 even that had a bottom 5 defense was the Blazers the last 2 years. And the Blazers have Stotts wasn't a good defensive coach. I think Stotts is a better coach overall than Billy, but I think Billy's a better defensive coach. They have the Bulls have better personnel, whether it's Caruso, quite frankly, Nurkic wasn't very good last year defensively until the playoffs. I think he was up and down. But they had Damon CJ, Caruso is good. He's one of the best guard defenders. Lonzo is good in his role. Levine, I think, is a better defender than either Dame or CJ the last 2 years. He's not abjectly very good, but he's better than them. Pat is better than what they've had. Covington is better, but Pat is better than what they had. I don't remember who the Blazers had, but point being is if you can't score, you allow much more opportunities in transition, and that's not what the Bulls are. I think the Bulls are going to have a fairly comfortable time putting the ball in the basket to get in there. I could see having them in the 18 to 22 range, but bottom 5 is just with all due respect, it's just ahistorical. It's just not how often defense works. It just isn't the case. And so my biggest concerns for them would be the interior defense and kind of how much you're putting on a guy like Pat Williams' plate. I think you saw some pretty impressive flashes, but you also saw some lapses at times. He would allow some back cuts and his movement improved a lot from Florida State, but it's still not great for a guy you have functioning a decent amount on the perimeter. I still do worry about kind of how do you balance how do you get the best defense out there without sacrificing a ton of offense? We mentioned Troy Brown. He's an interesting player offensively, but like he kind of needs the ball in his hands offensively. It's those side pick and rolls, that passing. He's not good enough in that role, right? So it would be kind of in the starting five, it would be the interior defense and still kind of the off-ball defense. Like Vooch is solid when the plays are coming directly at him, which is often what happens with centers, but he's not a Gobert, an Embiid, a Giannis, even a Brook Lopez, where he is, and that's not really fair to Vooch to compare him to five.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he's not proactive, where let's say he's guarding a stretch five and he's outside the paint, and someone drives from the left baseline and he's in the right corner. He's not going to fly in and make that rotation, whereas a lot of defenders can. I don't know. I'm going to like use another example of a great defender. So I'm not going to do it because it's not fair. Yeah. But point B is like, he's not a super proactive interior defender, right? Like he's good when things are coming right at him, and that has utility. Like I'm not trying to diminish that. But DeMar is bad off the ball. Like Zach is still not, like, I wouldn't call him an above average off ball guard defender. I'm trying to think who else is going to, so they're going to start. I think I mentioned everyone. So that would be my biggest concern. And then I just wonder still how they go about balancing the offense versus defense once it's not the starting five out there. And largely that would be still in the interior, because as you mentioned, Kris, earlier, like it's a small team. Like they've got good size and kind of in the backcourt, but they're still kind of short on wings off the bench and big men off the bench. I like Tony Bradley as a backup guy, but he's still, I think he's 6'9", maybe 6'10" on a good day, in the right shoes. And he's not super explosive vertically. Like he's good at staying vertical, and he's good at kind of being in the right spot and drop, but he's not someone who's like really quick off the ground, which matter. Like if you can, like, it just matters, right? Like it diminishes your margin of error when you're making rotations, if you're not quick off the ground. So, tentative, like I would have to think about it across the entire landscape of the league, but tentatively I'd probably have them in that like 18 to 22 range, because I think they'll be good. They'll be good in some respects because the offense will force team to take the ball to the basket, which again matters a ton. But it doesn't mean everything, right? So I can't get on board with bottom five. I just think that is ridiculous. I think it's undervaluing the offense because they're tied together, obviously. Even the net, like the Nets were pretty solid last year eventually, like by the playoffs and whatnot. But like even they were 22nd last year, and they had like Harden, who was not good defensively last year. Kyrie was up and down. KD was like kind of down to the playoffs. So like people just underrate the idea of how much offense matters to a good defense. And I think the Bulls will be a good case study of that, because I just have a tough time seeing them not be a top 10 offense. And I think that really will help them.
You brought up something about Troy Brown, but I kind of wanted to ask you a question, because I think I think some people, myself included, I saw like some potential in that bubble with Troy Brown as a ball handler and pick and roll. How real do you think that is? Is that almost like, wishing for something that just ain't gonna happen, or do you think there is something to having some optimism in terms of him being a ball handler in pick and roll?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's just trying to hope for something that's not there. I mean, I first became a fan of Troy Brown last year in the bubble, because I saw the defense and the passing flashes and second side pick and rolls, and that's the sort of pick and rolls he'll get, right? Like he's not going to play in a lineup without one of DeMar or Zach most often, right? Unless someone's sitting out for, they need a night off or things like that, and he can make things happen because he's 6'6". He's not like overly strong, but he's not super slender. Like he can get to his spots. Like you let him get half a step on a defense with that pick and roll flowing, and he's a good pocket passer. He's pretty prompt in things. So I don't think it's like by any means just like you see some passing flashes you're hoping for. Like we've seen a baseline of it, and I think the Bulls have enough offensive infrastructure in place that like you put him in the right spots and you'll see that passing really kind of show itself. So I'm kind of curious to kind of see how Billy Donovan uses him this year with such a new roster. But I mean, Scott Brooks put him in good situations, and like Scott can do things offensively, and I don't think he's like, I think sometimes his his words get overblown. I don't think he's better than Billy, but I think like a guy like that can put him in kind of the ideal situations. You can absolutely figure out a way to make it work with Billy. So, yeah, I don't think you're by any means like being overly rosy or overly optimistic. I think there's absolutely a clear path to Troy Brown being a useful offensive and defensive player as a 7th, 8th man, kind of that primary wing off the bench. I really like his fit. Mark Schindler, I did a podcast last month about kind of some breakout guys, and I think we kind of mentioned Troy as maybe a secondary guy that we like to kind of really solidify himself in this league. And I think this is a really, really good spot for him because the offensive infrastructure is there and they need his defense. And so I think he could really be, not trying to place pressure on, that's not one, but like I think it's just a really, really good spot for him to show what he does well on defense and kind of what he does well on offense without overextending him and putting him in the right spots to really thrive as a tertiary handler who has some passing chops and has size to get to a spot, because size is important to get to your spots. And I think he has the frame necessary and the understanding as a ball handler to really make it work.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just had to ask you, man, because, as a Bulls fan that's been through me and Chris, everybody that's in this chat, probably that are Bulls fans, we've been through a rough time, man. Been through a rough time for a while. And sometimes you just want to check yourself, before you start to fully buy into something that might happen. Or I should say, start putting things on a player. And I like what Troy Brown did. I wish he didn't have that ankle injury because I think he was starting to pick up some steam and Billy started to trust him more. So the ankle injury was tough because you kind of wish you could have seen a little bit more. But
yeah, I just shout out Jordan's comment.
I did just look up Mark Rabile. I apologize if I butchered the last name, but I see the similarities for sure, and I appreciate the comments. I would not pick myself first in a pickup game. I want to make that clear. I talked with somebody. I call myself to Isaiah Joe. I'm a good team defender. I can bomb threes.
Man.
But anything that's had the arc is not my forte. I'm weak. I can't really dribble. I don't have any burst. So I would not put myself first. I'm a good complimentary player. You need me as your 6th, 7th man. I'll make it work. But anything more than that, you're wasting your pick. Don't pick me that highly here.
Oh no, Don Burr has made an appearance. He's made an appearance.
What's up, Don? Jackson, I feel that strongly. That's my role. I'm a good team defender. I bomb threes. I can cut, but if I have to do anything more complicated than the crossover with ball handling, it's going to end in a turnover off my foot. So the Zach and Kobe, off the foot turnovers spoke to me. Very personally.
I don't have the physicality of Isaiah Joe. He's skinny, but I am like D'Angelo Russell around the rim. You get me in a cut, and I'm fading away from everything. I have a 6% foul rate. So that's not my thing, unfortunately. I got to learn from Isaiah. I got to talk with Isaiah how to be more physical at my frame. But now let's continue back with the Bulls. Too much Sixers talk. I don't know how did I bring up the Sixers? We're talking Bulls.
This is because I know you covered the league, but the Sixers are for today. So I did want to ask you briefly if anything else that Bulls fans should expect from Tony Bradley, because you were able to have a little bit more of an in-depth look at him and his role in the Sixers.
Yeah, I liked Tony last year. I got traded him for George Hill. Obviously didn't work out because George was recovering from thumb surgery and trying to kind of assimilate himself into a team that had title aspirations. Obviously fell well short of that. But Tony has really, really nice touch. He's a really good offensive rebounder as well. He's not someone you're going to ask to create, but you get him in an optimal situation in the post, and he has a nice little drop step and hook shot. The defense, I don't feel quite as confident in my evaluation because defense is always tougher to get a read on, and he didn't have a ton of reps with the Sixers. He had a few games where Joel missed. And so I think he's okay. I wouldn't say he's an above average big man defender off the bench. I could be off. Again, I haven't taken the time to compare every rotational backup center in the NBA on the fly here, but I don't think he's terrible. Again, he's not really vertically explosive, but he's pretty technically sound. But he is kind of small. I think, again, like I said, 6'9", 6'10". But I absolutely think he's a backup center in the NBA, which is not a slight. I think he was a late first-round pick. Being a rotation player, as anyone drafted past 25, is a good outcome. And so I like to pick up for them. I think he makes sense, and like he provides some similar strength and weaknesses to Vooch. There is value to diversity of style, but there's also value in terms of continuity of style. And I think in that sense, offensively, you'll get some similarities from Tony Bradley. So I like this. I liked it a lot. I was always fairly impressed with what Tony brought last year in his limited role with the Sixers. So I'm not trying to like say it's like Bulls fans should be ecstatic about him, but I think he will absolutely be a viable backup center for 14, 10 to 14 minutes a night, 10 to 16 minutes a night. And so that's all I can ask for. I think he'll probably get overly scrutinized because that's what happens with reserves.
Yeah.
But he's a top. I mean, like I always try to look at, like, I think he will provide the impact of a top 320-ish player next year, which is was a rotation guy. Like, I know that sounds like really absurd, but you have to look at it, like, not that either of you were criticizing that, but you have to look at it through the lens of, most teams have a 10 or 11 man rotation. And so if you were in the top 330 impact wise in a given year, you're a rotation player. So I think Tony will meet that, and impact metrics always like big is more because they're generally efficient and get counting stats, rebounds and blocks. And so I think Tony will be good for the Bulls. And I like that signing because I think he's just a solid NBA player in his role.
To go along with that, me and Kris are crazy, man. But when we traded when we got Tony, I watched maybe 4 or 5 games of him with OKC and some games with when he was on Philly. And something that I do like about him is, I don't think you have to stray too far away from those delay actions, dribble handoffs. Like, I think those are some things that he can do. I've seen him do it. And that's kind of like what I'm looking for. Like, as a coach, like you don't want to have to bring a guy off the bench where you have to like totally go away from everything that you want to do. Like, obviously he's not Vooch, so you're not going to do everything. But I think if you want to run some Chicago action or different types of looks, I think he can handle that. I think, and I like Tony Bradley. Like, everything you said, touch around the basket, that pops off the screen. The fighting for offensive rebounds, I love that. I truly love that. So yeah, man. We'll see how it goes.
He's a man after my own heart. Bulls fans had a big debate last year. It pains me to say that it was a debate, but Wendell Carter Jr. versus Daniel Gafford. I like both of these players. They're very different players. Daniel is much springier. He's big blocks. Big offensive boards. But Wendell Carter was just a technically sound player with a lot less pop. And so he would do all those things. Like, he would just set the perfect screen for screen assists to get someone open for a three, or like, so I was always a big Wendell Carter fan for the little things, the fundamentally sound things that don't always show up on the stat sheet, or, it's like he's not averaging 3 blocks a game, but he's probably a much more effective actual rim protector than the guy who does average, 3 blocks a game if he's out of position or chasing blocks or rebounds or whatever. And so I can appreciate the subtle intricacies of a solid, fundamentally sound big man. But another question I wanted to ask you was another major concern from national media has been the cost to put this team together, and the fact that they're sacrificed a couple first-round picks to get Vooch, and obviously Wendell Carter, and then another first-rounder to get DeMar, and also we gave up Thad Young. Now, we did recoup a first from Portland in the Lowry Markkanen trade. So as of today, the Bulls are only out 1 first-round pick for the foreseeable future. We've got 2 next year, then we give up our 2023 pick. We've got our 2024 pick, and then we don't have our 2025 pick in the DeMar trade. So we've got 4 out of the next 5, and then that's all. But the major concern has been, okay, well, you put this team together, 2 of your 3 best players are already in their 30s. Your maximum ceiling is a second-round exit at best. Like, if everything comes together, you're a second-round exit, and then you've got no future. You trade away your stuff. So I wanted to see what you thought about that before we gave our opinion on it. But what's your opinion on the cost that Chicago gave up, and do you think that they've seriously diminish their ability to be successful in the future by doing these moves?
So there is way too much harping on the future of things. Like, why doesn't the current matter? Like, why? Like, not either of you are saying this, but like, why does it not matter that like they would squander another year of Zach LaVine if they didn't make some of these moves, right? Like, why? Like, yes, of course. Like, I know, Chris, you were stopping at 2025 because there are some picks after that that are not in their hands. But like, why does the current not matter? Why does not making the second round like winning a playoff series again is something that only a quarter of the league does every year? Like, that matters. And so I get the hesitancies, and I think that the deal for DeMar was probably a little more than he will return on court impact wise, and I get that, but again, they absolutely ran the, like, if they had not made any of these moves over the last 6 months, they run the risk of losing LaVine. Like, it's just the reality of it. Like everything that we know about LaVine is that he is an incredibly hard worker and like wants to win. And if you don't show a commitment to that, like, what reason would he have to say he was traded here? He signed a deal here, but like he didn't, like, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't come here like on his own volition. He stayed put. He didn't go from Minnesota to Chicago under his own desire, right? And so I get that maybe they didn't maximize this entire offseason, and, you know, I guess going back to the Boots trade as well, but like, I just think there's way too much focus on the idea of like, well, what happens in the long term? But like, what happens now? Like, winning the series matters. The Bulls haven't won a series since what? Since 2013, 20 was the year they made the conference finals against LeBron, or maybe the winning year after that. Like it's been a while. And Chicago is a premier, you know, like, it's one of the premier franchises. Like, I know it hasn't been that way for like largely of MJ's tenure, but still it mattered. Like, it matters to win series. Like, that is an accomplishment. And I personally don't care about the business side of things. I know that's how the NBA works, but like from ownership perspective, like, winning a series, like having at the very least like 4 playoff games a year potentially at home, like, matters. Like, that is something that like, I'm not, like, I will never be the one that is like, you know, caping for ownership in the business side of things, but like, you have to look at things like that if you're going to assess how these things work. Like, you can criticize it, but you also have to like understand that it's like these people in charge want to make money, and the Bulls will be able to, if they will be in a good spot, if that, like, as a team, if you win a playoff series, that matters a lot, both on the court and financially. I don't really care about the finances part, but people do care about that. People making decisions care about that. So, like, I get it, and I think there are ways to be critical of the things they've done over the last 6 months, but you have a very, very good player in Zach LaVine, and like I don't think they make this move if Zach LaVine is the same guy who was like, he's averaging 22, 5 and 4 on 57% true shooting. Like, that's good, but I don't think they make those moves if Zach doesn't become the 20, what he averaged, 27, 5 and 4 last year on, you know, very, very much above average true shooting. Like, I don't think they make those moves because Zach at that point wasn't that caliber of player to do so for, but now he is. I'm curious to see what he lands at this year, but I just think there's way too much harping on kind of the what ifs in the future and not enough like focus on the present of things. I think that's generally a flaw of all NBA analysis. It's about framing things long term, not about what happens now. And the Bulls have a legit chance to be very good, and it might not work out, but like, I don't know. I just think there's like 2027 is 6 years away.
Yeah.
Like, and so like, and that it might matter. It probably will matter, but like, it also matters now to like show that you're invested in winning around this guy in Zach LaVine, who has done everything in his power to be the very best player he can be, and is about to be a free agent in, you know, 10 months. So, yeah, it's just, I just think there's just too much focus on what matters later rather than now. And what matters now is the Bulls have a very, very good starting five. And while they may be hampered in 6 years, they still have a lot of ways to be good in the interim. And that's why I like the Lowry trade so much, is like getting a little bit of flexibility back because of the Stepien rule. Like, that was a big thing, right? Because when they traded all those picks in the DeMar deal, like, you worried about the Stepien rule and how that mattered, but like now they have a little more flexibility again. So, yeah, I just like, I'm not out here saying the Bulls are gonna be the 3 seed, the 4 seed, but like I generally kind of understand and support what they've done over the last 6 months, and I think there just needs to be more focus about who they are currently rather than who they might be in 6 years, when none of these guys who are currently on the roster are on the team now, or on the team in 6 years, and maybe the front office is different too. Like, front offices move quickly, so I don't know. I just get frustrated with that sort of thing, and I generally support what the Bulls are doing, trying to go for it and show that they're committed to Zach LaVine, who clearly has shown he's committed to being as good as he can be throughout his 7-year career. Was he 2015? Whatever it's been.
Yeah,
he's always shown.
Yeah, it's been 7 seasons now, I think.
So that's my long-winded way of saying that the present matters a lot. I don't think that is priced in enough to how people evaluate moves and just things of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said, man, is exactly how me and Kris feel. I'm a big supporter of a aggressive GM, president of basketball operations, that understands that, especially for the Bulls, that it's about changing and getting that stigma away from this organization that, you know, it's a tough place to play. Players don't want to play there. They don't care about the players, things like that. And I think getting guys, getting Vooch and getting DeMar, guys that have, that have a lot of connections, a lot of relationships throughout the league, where, like you said, down the road, like those picks don't, right at the moment, they don't matter in my eyes, right? So, like you're really trying to build an organization that players, when they become free agents, actually think about wanting to come to Chicago, and that's just the way I think about it. Like you're marketing your organization by getting players like DeMar and Vooch in here, and word of mouth, things like that. So that's why I'm okay with what they're doing. Like in if you win, that's also more that's also more even more of a reason for guys that want to come play for this organization. So I'm okay with what's been going on. I honestly am. So,
and also I would just add, like, the NBA moves super, super quickly. Like, nobody has any idea what things are going to look like in 2027 when these picks maybe really start to hamper what the Bulls can do. Like, I just think that's such an important thing with analysis. As I've started to cover the NBA more in depth, I've really tried to embrace it's okay to know what I don't know. And I just have a tough time really being critical of something that's going to largely affect a franchise in 6 years. I don't know what it's gonna I don't know what it's gonna be like. And so, like, I get maybe being somewhat critical of it, but at the same time, like, you got to embrace the unknown. You got to embrace that, like, maybe I don't have the full picture of what this means for the Bulls at this moment. So, apologize if I cut you off, Kris. I know you're about to say something.
No,
get that in.
No, it's fine. But I mean, for me, we were talking about, it's like, oh no, we won 50 games and we're a second round exit. That's like 25 teams wet dream right now. Like, I would love to be in that position and have, like 2 all-stars in their prime, one of entering their prime and one in their prime. And, like, we got Lonzo Ball locked up. He's a good young player. Patrick Williams has a lot of promise. Like Kobe White, and we got 4 of our 5 next first round picks. It's like, I think you're right, Jackson. You hit it on the head. I think we focus way too much on the future. And another thing I think has been way too much of a focus is the idea that winning the transaction is more important than putting together a team that a city can be proud of or just root for or have interest in. Like, if we were a second round exit this year, even if we're a first round exit, it's like, as you mentioned, like the greatest success we've had since like prime Derrick Rose years. That would be a wonderful. I mean, even if we matched up with the Nets and got swept in 4 in the first round, like, okay, but I want to see Zach LaVine in the playoffs, and that's the other thing.
Yes.
Is that what was the alternative? Okay, you can quibble about how much you paid for DeMar. I agree with you. I mean, I think we paid more than I would have liked to. I think we're paying him on a contract more than I would like to. But the market isn't like liquid. These are the players that are available. He was the best player on the market to fit the needs of our team at this time, and that's what it cost. And the alternative is, okay, well, let's say you want to extend LaVine. All right, got 6 or 7 players off the roster, so you can create $14 million in cap space. You can extend and max him, or max and extend him for the next 4 years, and have him miss the playoffs again, and like got all your talent. And like, or we do, let's say we sign, instead of DeMar, let's say we signed I don't know, Reggie Bullock, right? Who was both Larry and I were a fan of that kind of idea. All right, well, that's not as much talent, and maybe we pay a lot less. But let's say we miss the play-in or we lose in the play-in round, and Zach LaVine walks in a year. Okay, like you screwed yourself. Congratulations. Like we had to do this. We had to put it in.
You've got Pat Will, Kobe White, and Vooch, I think, for 2 more years. He has 1 more year than I think he signed.
Yeah, he's got this season and the next.
Yeah, and so
declining deal as well. Yep.
Yeah, that's the whole thing is like, what's the alternative? And I mean, DeMar is making more than I think he is going to be. Like in terms of the people around him that are making similar amounts, I don't think he'll be able to largely approximate their similar on-court impact. But like at the same time, like you sometimes had to pay a little more. Like you had to sell him on Chicago, right? Like I'm sure he could have gone like I think the stuff to the Lakers and maybe even the Clippers, is a couple other suitors that like had much closer championship aspirations was legit. And so you have to I'm not saying you have to pay him $28 million. Obviously great for DeMar, like just obviously seems like a genuinely fantastic human. Like get the bag, like do your thing, dude. But sometimes you have to pay a little more. Like there's that sort of thing matters, right? So yeah, I just don't like people talk about there's no what was the alternative, right? So I think we're generally on the same wavelength. I think in terms of the on-court fit and some of the on-court product, maybe a little lower than 2 of you, but I think this team is going to be good. I mean, before Levine's injury last year, and I know you can say like a lot of teams were dealing with, it was a weird year last year. Just basically every team had some caveat that they could look about and spin this year positively, which is what teams should do. But they weren't that far off of the play-in last year, and now they have a full year of Vooch. They have another year of Patrick Williams. They have Kobe White in a better role. They have Lonzo Ball in place now. They have Alex Caruso. They have DeMar, who, for all of his warts, is a better player than whoever is replaced in the rotation. They're going to be good, and that matters. And I think that's the whole thing is people are like, and you mentioned it, Chris, like they're only a second round exit at best, and it's sure, we're gonna start saying like they're only a conference finalist at best. Like where do you draw the line is like inadequate?
Bunch of bums.
Yeah,
because is that you're either you win a championship or you should disband your entire franchise.
Yeah, so I just think it's very strange how we view these things. Like making the second round is a really, really awesome deal. Like especially for a Bulls team that doesn't have a guy that I frame as the best player in the championship team. Like I cover the Sixers, obviously. Making the second round is a failure because Joel is an MVP candidate. But for the Bulls, whose best player is like a top 25-ish, top 30 guy, making the second round is really, really good. Like that's a really hard thing to do. So I just think of course they would be ideal if they had a top 7-8 player. No duh.
Yeah.
But if they make the second round with Zach LaVine as their best player, and I'm not sliding Zach LaVine, but if they make a second round with him as their best player, that is a really, really good thing to be because Zach is not a top 10 to 12 guy, which is not a slot him. It's really, really hard to be that, but it's an accomplishment to win a series. That matters with your high-end talent being a borderline all-NBA guy, borderline all. I mean, Zach was awesome last year, and we had to do a push for him as an all-star, right? I know it didn't matter. I wrote an article about him advocating for him as an all-star. So that's your best player, which again, it's not a slot on him, but if that's who your best player is and winning a series is really, really valuable and impressive. So I just think there's too much reductiveness and shrugging off winning a playoff series is pretty foolish because especially for shrugging off, for the Sixers, sure, they're one seed, but shrugging off for the Bulls who haven't won a series in nearly a decade is just not contextualize things properly. And so I just don't really understand kind of doing that.
We do have some questions in here, so I kind of wanted to hit a couple here. Jordan Guilty, what's up, brother? He says, basically, how do you feel about Io and Marco? Do you think they could be second-round gems that turn into rotational players next year or ready to contribute now?
So before I answer that, there's a couple people who are saying Zach can still become top 10 to 15. Mm-hmm. I don't disagree. I'm not saying otherwise. I'm just as the current things currently stand, he is not there. I'm not ruling it out. Zach gets better every year. I was once a fairly adamant Zach skeptic. I have now become a very big Zach proponent, which is a testament to him and an indictment of my evaluation. So not saying otherwise, but with regard to that question, I don't have much to contribute about Simonovic because I just didn't really watch him in Europe. Ayo, I don't think will be a much of a rotation player this year. I think he really has to kind of alter his style to an off-ball game. I'm curious where the jumper lands. I think the on-ball defense is pretty impressive, but he's largely been a guy who likes to get downhill, but isn't super kind of creative in how he gets downhill, which I think is tough because I don't think he is like a Russ or Wall explosive level athlete, which again is a super high tier you have to reach. But it does matter if you're not a really willing shooter and he's kind of slight of frame as well. So I hope that if he plays with the Windy City Bulls, he'll be able to kind of have those reps to learn how to do change of speed and kind of maybe those body angles, those half spins, things like that kind of mask exactly where you're going as a downhill driver. Because you can make it work at his size as a downhill driver, but I think he's a little just point A to point B. I need to see a little more diversity there. So I can't offer anything on Marco, unfortunately, but I think with Ayo, there's definitely a path to him being a rotation player, but I think it's going to require some significant adjustment. I don't think he can't get there. I should say I think he can get there rather than a double negative. But I think it's going to take some time and kind of some adjustment. I don't think it's something that will happen in the kind of the developmental reps that blowout games invite. So not out on Ayo. And my understanding of him is a little more rudimentary than I prefer. I still have a decent idea of him, but I think it's already going to have to be a little better off-ball player or really become a herky-jerky change of pace, master of cadence type of player, which you can get to, but it's not who he is at this point because he's largely been able to get to his spots in college, and he was a dominant college player last year. So didn't hate the pick or anything, but I think it'll take some adjustment in his play style. But that's all I can offer on the two. Are those two-way guys this year
they're two. So there was their second round pick last year and their second round pick this year, basically. But Marco didn't come over; he was overseas last year. So.
Are they taking the two-way spots though? Am I correct there? Or am I?
Their roster spots. Their two-way is Devon Dotson, and their second one hasn't been picked up yet, but maybe one of the camp guys. So they're technically rotation. Yeah, they're the 12th and 13th guy. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that's all I can provide on them, but I wish I could offer something more on Marco. But I don't know if it's still up there, but I will say that I don't know if Spencer Perlman on Twitter had a lot of stuff on Marco Simonovic at some point. I don't know if it's up there because he's now transitioned to SIS Hoops, which is a little more private facing, but if anyone's looking for more analysis on Marco, it's always worth checking something on Spencer's feed. It's Spencer Perlman on Twitter, so can't guarantee it, but I know he had some. I know I always saw stuff on Marco on his feed last year before he joined SAS.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with Ayo. We did a film breakdown of him some episodes ago, and I was going to say spring training. It's not baseball, but in summer league. I totally agree. He was just one speed, and he'd make a great play on a defensive end. And then I think adding that change of pace, like you said, will do wonders for him in terms of his offensive ability. And the shot is, he moves a little bit all over the place. Like I think he needs to calm his lower half of his body down in his shot and really, work on that. But I agree everything you said about, Ayo. Marco, we've talked about him. He's just going to take some time. I think Windy City Bulls would be huge for both these guys, and see what happens from there. Now, I'm going to ask this next question, but I'll just ask this next question. So, and would you trade Kobe? Because at this point, I would. I feel like you could get some legitimate big man depth. Do you agree with that?
I would not trade Kobe at this point, not because I'm like huge on his game, but because I think this is by far the best infrastructure he's had. And so I think it could be something where you let him, like, what's the timetable for him? Do either of you is there anything that we know about him?
Kobe?
Yeah, he's supposed to be out 4 or 5 months. So probably sometime in like November or December is what we're looking at.
So I think if you have enough time for him to get his feet wet and get situated, like you could move him around the deadline. because I think this is going to be the best situation for him to showcase what he's good at, which is being an off-ball player. I think like there's definitely still like a fairly wide mark on him, because I get it. Like there's a lot of pretty ton on-ball flash, and I think he got better as a passer last year. I don't think he's like a good passer yet, but I think he got better. But I think you're going to see even more strides this year, because he's not going to be asked to play on the ball, and like quite frankly, that's just not his role. The handle is not there, and the strength is not there. I mean, he routinely dribbles the ball like around his like clavicle area, which is just not conducive to like getting downhill or covering ground efficiently. And so limiting those things will be important. So I would not trade him now. I think he will be a more impactful player in 5 months than he is now. And so I think you could really kind of get more for him. And I think he would be better. Like I think this is a really good opportunity for Kobe. I was a pretty big fan of Kobe as a prospect. Definitely underrated, kind of the limited handle there, which has been a pretty big limiter for him in the NBA. But I think this is a really good opportunity for him, because what I've seen, through 2 years in the NBA is that he's at his best in that off-ball role, and I think this will be the best chance for him to do that consistently. And so I think trading him now before the year starts would be kind of limiting him in kind of the optimal role for him. Not from a Bulls perspective, but I think getting to show who he can be is important for his long-term development, right? Because I want Kobe to be the best player he can be. And so I think showing potential suitors this is his best role matters for him as well. So I want, for his sake too, to get to show that on a good team. And so I would not move him yet. I don't think it's best for him or the team in terms of getting the most back for him and him landing in the best spot and the best role, because I think there are some teams that still kind of have a lot of hope for him as a, kind of that 1B, 2A career, and that's just not who he is. He's an off-ball player, and I think he can be good in that role. But I want to actually see him get 25 games of that rather than just kind of the projection, the small flash that we've seen at times.
Yeah, I agree completely. Jackson he's got a real opportunity to showcase his skills this year in a way that he hasn't been able to on a good team. I think he's been overtasked at times on the offensive end and defensive end this last year especially. And if he can just, he was a really good catch and shoot 3-point shooter last year. He got real hot. I mean, him and Zach were the first duo in NBA history somehow to both score to make 8 3-pointers in a game, which I thought Steph and Clay would have done, but it's Zach and Kobe. But we had another question, Larro. I'm not sure if you're going to hit this one, but from Nippy. You mentioned Jackson, Zach LaVine improving every year. So Nippy's asking, what aspects do you hope he can try and improve on for this year? Like, what are you looking for him to do this upcoming season?
Yeah, so I think offensively the biggest thing I want to continue to see him refine is the accuracy of his passes. I think he got better at that this past year, like a lot better. Honestly, I was really, really impressed with that part of his game. Like the scoring efficiency was incredible, but when I watched him, I was most impressed with like more timely reads, whether it was out of traps, things like that. But I still think, like you mentioned, kind of dribbling off his leg. I think even at times in crunch time, beyond the dribble, like the dribbling blunders, there were still times where he was not lazy, but just like not as accurate as you would want in deliveries, and that led to some turnovers. And so that's what I want to see. I want to see him be a higher foul or free throw rate guy than he is.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good point.
Last year he was at his literally his career average. He's at 0.265 for his career. Last year he's at 0.265. A guy who can basically score from all three levels and is that caliber of athlete, I think should get to the line more than he does. So like for anyone who's curious about free throw rate, that means like for every one shot he took 0.265 free throws, which is just not very good for a guy who should be able to create advantages as often as Zach does, or does create advantages as often as Zach does. So I want to see a little more craft there. I think the not easy one, but kind of the one that would make the most sense is the classic Harden, where like you turn the corner and you somehow get that defender's arm under your elbow, which seems a little cheap, but it's one that like people get all the time. It's not one that's been legislated out. It's not the pump fake thing. So that's what I want to see from him more defensively. I want him to just trust more in the scheme and not help when he's not supposed to. We mentioned earlier, kind of he still loves to help one pass away, and there are the off chance that some schemes dictate that. But that has been something across both Boylan and Donovan's tenure, where he loves to help off from the strong side corner a lot. So that would be my big three areas: is continue to refine his passing accuracy and timeliness, which he got a lot better at last year. I do want to highlight that. Two, getting a little more crafty as a foul drawer. I think he can absolutely get there. Like his second year in Chicago, his first full year post ACL, he had about a .33 free throw rate. I would love to see at least get to there. I think get higher, like 350, 380. And then the defense, kind of the discipline there. Because I think he has high enough feel defensively to know that's not always what he should do, but he just can't always help himself, which, like, as someone who's played, not like, again, I know like rec basketball is different than like NBA basketball. There are absolutely things I know I shouldn't do that I do all the time when I play with pickup. So I can kind of empathize there. Again, I'm not trying to like say I know exactly what Zach's going through. But I think he has a baseline requisite feel kind of threshold to not do that. So those are my three biggest areas. I know those are kind of micro skills, but I think Zach kind of has largely the broad skills down, especially on offense. I think there are definitely kind of concerns about like, can he replicate his efficiency next year? And like, I get that. And I think a way to quell those concerns would be to get to the line, more than he does, just generate easier shots. And so that's what I want to see from Zach. I think he can get there. I mean, he's 26, right? I think he's kind of right now entering his prime. So those would be the kind of the biggest things. If I was working with Zach over the offseason, that's what I would be trying to identify. And obviously whatever Zach does every offseason works, so he should not listen to me. But that's kind of what I'm hoping to see next year. Just incremental improvements in those regards. And I think especially the passing will get better because it was so much better last year. Like that was like beyond the defense 2 years ago. That was my biggest concern with him. I just did not like the passing, whether it was the processing speed or the accuracy of the reads. And he got way, way better there. Really kind of just proved me wrong. Not that it matters to prove me wrong, but was very impressed there. And I think he'll absolutely continue to expand that part of his game with more offensive talent around him.
To touch on the defensive part of Zach, I'm assuming you did watch a lot of the USA, Olympic games, right? With
I saw it once. I saw most of the single elimination game. I think I maybe saw one of the group tournament stage, but yeah, I saw some of it. But anyhow,
I guess what I guess what I'm trying to ask you is there anything that you did see from Zach that you think that surprised you on the defensive end, or something that you thought, wow, he improved there? Or is it, do you think Zach kind of showed you like, okay, well, when scoring is not the number one thing for him, that he has shown, he showed the ability to maybe step up on that end? Do you feel that at all, or any of those things?
Honestly, it's tough for me to say because I watched those games pretty casually. Like I didn't take any notes, and sometimes I was watching them like I was out at dinner or I was hanging out with other people. So I really can't say one way or the other. I don't want to be too definitive. I'm a big believer in stating claims based off film. I just don't feel confident in the film I watched. But I did think he was better in the stuff I saw. But again, it's just kind of a very rough recall there. So I can't really point anything specifically, but I did think he was better. But again, like I'm kind of like, I guess the defensive personnel wasn't great there. Like they had Dame, they had Booker, and then Booker's like a fine defender. But I just can't really say specifically what I saw because I don't have any notes to refer to, or like it wasn't like when I was watching, I was really making sure that I remembered these things.
Yes.
Just because it was,
Can I say, man,
it was a busy, condensed 2020-21 NBA season. So the Olympics were something that I tried to enjoy rather than scrutinize. Not that I encourage anyone who did the latter, but it was not for me. I couldn't do it this year.
Can I just say how much I respect that? Like that you're not just spewing off stuff, just make it sound good. I respect. I think Kris just talked about this last week about like it's okay to say you don't know, right? I just respect that about you, man. I really do.
I'm trying to get better at it. Like I totally get trying to know to say everything, but I'm confident. Like I watch a lot of film. I've read a lot of there's things I don't know. Like the two of you asked if I could talk about Elyse Johnson today, and I was kind of like I don't know if I can. It's a bit of it's not a sore spot, but just a lack of knowledge for me. So. And that's important, right? Like I don't know everything, and no one knows everything. Like it's just you just can't unless your entire job is just to watch the NBA, never write or talk or podcast about it. Like you just don't have enough time to watch all these teams. I don't have what to say about Zach in summer in Tokyo. I think he had some nice scoring explosions, but I don't have any notes to refer to. It's just all memory from 2 months ago at this point, a month and a half ago. So I wish I had more, but yeah, I don't know a lot about it. But I generally speaking, I'm encouraged by Zach's growth in two key areas, which is just defensive aptitude and passing development. So I think he'll continue to get better. He turns 26, turned 27 2 days after I turned 24. So March 10th for him. So excited to kind of see what he does in kind of the heart of his prime this next year. I think he's going to be really, really good, even if he's not maybe quite as efficient as he was last year. I think you could see him have his best or most impactful year moving forward.
It's funny. Such a great, it's such a great speech that you just gave, because it's exactly what we were talking about last week. Is we hit on those exact points. It's almost impossible to watch the amount of basketball you would need to watch at a deep enough level to have a really informed take about every player on every roster in the NBA. But the problem is most national people have a take anyway and are afraid to say, I don't know, or I haven't watched enough. I'd have to check on that. And that's why I respect your work so much, Jackson, is because I know that what you're saying, and when you do say it, it comes from a place of study and knowledge and putting in the time and effort. And so I can trust when you say something, because I know if you didn't put in that effort, you'd say, I haven't put in the effort yet. I don't know this. I haven't looked it up. And so don't say anything. I'm not going to say anything definitive. So just to be clear for the listeners, Jackson believes that Zach will be first team all defense next year. Okay. Next question.
I know we've been talking a lot about the Bulls, right? And we're going an hour and 40 right here. But I did want to get to some questions that just kind of like away from basketball, right? The first one I have to ask you, just personally, I just want to know, who is a writer that influenced you, that made you think, wow, I want to do this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, like, honestly, for me, so I joined my school newspaper, Gonzaga, my second semester freshman year, and part of it was that, like, I went from being a huge runner in high school, and that was kind of what I organized my daily routines around. And my first semester freshman year, I didn't have that, and so I was just doing the classic, college, like, partying a lot, drinking too much, not really having any sense of purpose beyond Fridays and Saturdays. And so I got back. I kind of went back home, and I took a journalism class my first semester.
Yep.
And I emailed that professor and just kind of asked how I get involved. And I joined him, and he referred me to the editor-in-chief at the time. And I went to that first meeting, and I picked up a story kind of sheepishly and was a little timid. But I just I'm trying to there was a writer named Andy Bueller who was the editor-in-chief of my fall semester, so not when I was on the staff, who I just really appreciated the way he approached things and was really articulate in how he kind of termed and phrased his articles. And he always was really, complimentary of me. So he's someone who pushed me a lot. Brian Hamilton over at The Athletic is someone I've really, really enjoyed reading. I think he's awesome at feature writing. And I definitely noticed some similarity between when I do features and kind of, borrowing styles from him in terms of delivery and trying to set up important quotes or important paragraphs. I'm trying, there's just a lot. Honestly, just a lot of different people. I think people often ask me kind of what advice you have, and it's a lot of reading. And it's really what it is. Whatever you want to get into as a writer, just reading a lot of that. I like the way Jonathan Tjarks frames things. I don't necessarily always agree with his analysis, but I like the way that he lays out articles really well.
Yeah.
I could go on and on about I think Caitlin Cooper, everyone loves her, and deservedly so. She is brilliant at what she does, but it's not just the X's and O's of what she does. It's just the syntax and the diction, the delivery of everything is really, really impressive. She's someone I'm always trying to read and kind of trying to get better. So those would be kind of 3 or 4 different people that I mentioned there that really kind of, I think, have helped shape not only writing in general, but also how I view NBA writing. But if I could have 20 minutes to think about it, I would probably include a bunch of other people. I've been really fortunate to have a lot of people who've been really kind and gracious to me throughout my 4 or 5 years as a writer. So well, those are some people that come to mind that I think have really kind of shaped whether it's just the writing or kind of the analysis side of things.
So, the next question is for both you guys. All right, I'll go Jackson first, and then obviously you next, Chris, and then I'll give mine after. Jackson, I assume when you go out, are you a karaoke guy? Do you like to do karaoke?
Oh heck yeah!
Okay.
I'll do karaoke sober. I'll do it. Get a few beers with me. I'll absolutely do it. But I love karaoke. I'm a huge karaoke guy.
This is good. This is great. Okay, my question is to you and you as well, Chris. What is the go-to song? Right, you walk in a bar, in wherever you do your karaoke, and that first song you think of that you want to do.
Oh man, I got a few honestly. I have some that like individually that I've like my friends in college and we would do karaoke every now and then. We would have some that we would communally share. But like I am a sucker for Taylor Swift. You Belong With Me. I can sing all of that. I can do all of it. I can do some Elton John.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. All of his popular hits. But my friends and I in college, so I went to Gonzaga. There's no football team there, but two of them, both like one friend, both of his parents went to Washington State. Another side, one of his parents went there, and so we would go to Washington State games. And every intermission between the first and second quarter, they would play Andy Grammer's Back Home, with like a big montage of Washington State football stuff. And so we're masters at that. So I'll sing Back Home by Andy Grammer. But I am all over the place, honestly. Like any popular song, I can probably find a way to either actually sing it or feign that I am singing it correctly. But I love karaoke. That's one of the things I've missed during the pandemic. Is not hasn't really been safe to grab a dirty, grimy microphone and sing into it, and get spit all over it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to doing some karaoke soon. But individually, I think You Belong With Me is the one I have to go to. But I'm pretty flexible with a lot of different popular songs. I can get into a lot of different stuff.
Man, this brings back a lot of memories for me. So this is, when you see you start asking, I was like, I'm going to get in trouble for this. But I'm with Jackson. I love karaoke. I love singing. I'm the type of person that I can repeat a song back to you just by listening to it. I just get it stuck in my head, and I know the lyrics. And I know all the notes. Like I just have this ear for music in that sense that it's always kind of stuck with me. Yeah, I mean, I'm down for anything. Like Carly Rae Jepsen's "Call Me Maybe" is always a banger. Like no matter what. But I could like anything the classics. But I will say, my freshman year of college, me and a couple of friends decided to do karaoke and like I guess like a skit for Nelly's song "Shake Your Tail Feather" from the Bad Boys soundtrack. And we were not allowed to finish the song because of the explicit content, unfortunately. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. So I would be down if I ever saw Jackson Frank in real life, which I hopefully will be before Summer League next year or at Summer League next year. We should definitely do a karaoke evening. I'd definitely be down for that.
Yeah, dude, I'm down. I went to Cabo with the two best friends over the summer. Once we were like fully vaccinated, when I went to a karaoke bar, and it was a blast. We hadn't done it for almost 2 years probably, and we sang some Taylor Swift, we sang some Elton John. It was great. It was a blast. I had missed it, but yeah, I'm always down for karaoke. It's a fun time. You just people love it. All you gotta do is be confident, right? Like it doesn't matter if you're actually, as long as
no downsides.
Because other people are singing too. You gotta act like you own the stage, and that's all they want. People want show people. That's all they want. So
people want to feel God in this Chili's. You know what I
mean? Mine is gonna throw you guys off. It's
can't even say it.
It's Wonderwall by the Oasis. I can go that all day. I don't know what it is, man. I just move with it. I don't know what it is.
I feel like you've got some good R&B chops.
Oh.
Like, I feel like you can do any of that.
Hey man, look,
I believe you. I believe in you.
We could talk about some Beyonce. We could talk about some Motown, but we won't get into that because we're close. So I'll give you one more question.
Temptations.
Yes.
Yes, anything.
Have you been to Chicago, Jackson?
I have not. Oh no, I have. That's a lie. Oh my god, why did I so instinctively lie about that? It's been a while. I think in 2007 the USA Track and Field Championships were in Indianapolis. Maybe 08 as well. Not 08, but 2 years in a row they were 06 and 07 maybe. And they would have breaks in between some of the days. Like it wouldn't be every day for 6 or 7 days. And so my dad and I went out, and I think we went to Madison, Milwaukee one year. We went to Chicago another year. So I've been to Wrigley. It's been, I want to say 14 years, almost exactly. It was in the summer of 2007. So it's been a long time, but I want to make it out there for sure. I know so many more people now in the Midwest that I got to make a trip out there. It might happen. I might make a whole week trip out of the Midwest with All-Star Weekend in Cleveland this year. But it's been a while. It's been since before I was double digits. So.
Wow. Okay. So that question probably won't work then. So I'll go to this one. This is for you as well, Kris. All right. Last question. If you could pick one song that is a soundtrack, that could be the soundtrack to your life, what would it be and why?
Come on, Larro.
Oh, man. No prep on you. I feel blindsided. My goodness.
I know.
I know. Oh, soundtrack of my life.
Only one song?
I mean, you guys can go. I mean, if you don't mind, you can go ahead and do as many as you need.
I'm gonna look through my liked songs playlist on Spotify.
let me give Jackson some time here, and I'll tell you how about an album? Can I just pick an album?
That's totally fine. Yeah.
This is gonna date me and make me nerdier, but the Blue album by Weezer, I could live on that album. Just the range of or even maybe even Pinkerton. Shoot. I'm a big Weezer fan, so but yeah, like or if I'm feeling a good mood, Island in the Sun by Weezer. That's the one like I'm always vibing to. But man, that's a tough one, Larro. I got to do some study. I got to do some research on this.
I feel like we got blindsided on that one. That was a good question. Oh man, I'm looking through my playlist. I'm trying to think what resonates close. And it's just like songs. Not even a playlist. Oof.
Oh my God.
I mean, like, I can go a lot of different directions. Like, I mean, Bob Marley's got a couple of great albums.
Man.
Yes. Like Stevie Wonder's.
Oh, Jackson, you're pulling at my heartstrings right now, brother. I love it.
I mean, like Dua Lipa's last album was great too. Like,
yeah, you were on Twitter all day with Dua Lipa.
Oh man, it's still great. I'll listen to it after this. I mean, there's a band called Lake Street Dive that's got some great stuff. Man, I think I gotta go with Swimming by Mac Miller. I really do.
Ooh.
I think I'm going albums. I really do. I really did like that album. Like, I loved it obviously before he passed away, unfortunately, and I loved it even more since. But I don't know. That's tough. There's so many good albums out there. I like so many different styles of music. It's tough to pick one song or even one album. But
yeah, Jackson's gonna text you tomorrow afternoon and be like, "I'm so sorry. It was actually this. I thought about it all night.
be
Woke up in a cold sweat. Yeah.
No work for me when you sit at this desk and figure out what my one song is.
Man, I could do Spoon too. I might do Spoon instead. Yeah. All right, Larry, let's hear it because I know you've cheated and you've had time to think about this question and the answer to it.
I actually didn't because I wanted to think like you guys, but as you guys were guessing, I mean, or going through your playlists and things like that, Jackson, the more you get to know me, I am a huge Drake fan.
We've seen this. Yeah, I've seen it.
So, if I had to pick one song that could literally, you're walking around, it's just playing around in your background, and it means a lot to you, it would be "Connect" from Nothing Was the Same, and I just feel that's my vibe. That's my vibe. You know what I mean? So, That would be my one song. If I had to pinpoint one song, if I had to pick a whole album, it'd be Take Care. That's just me.
You did better than Chris and I, though. I mean, we cheated with albums, so
here's the thing, right? I always say like I love all different types of music, which I do. Like if I hear something and it sounds good, I like it, right? But I'm like Patrick in from SpongeBob, right? Like he just stays under a rock. Like I have one person I like, and I just listen to that one person all the time. You know what I mean? So it's like it was a little bit easier.
He's got an extensive discography, so I don't blame you. I get it. As long as you're listening to his great run from whatever it was the early century last decade, then you're good. As long as it's not views and onward, then I won't judge you. So you're good.
Whoa, wait, hold on, Jackson.
I don't have an issue with Drake recently. I'm just
Jackson.
Like, his prime is before views. So it's like as long as you're hitting the prime of Drake, then I will relent. But it's gotta be some of the older stuff. Take care.
I hope you're ready for another hour of podcasting.
Donda or CLB?
Come on.
I'm not.
Okay, I'm done.
No more questions.
I'm good.
Well, we kept you half hour longer than I told you we would, so I apologize in advance. Well, I apologize after the fact now, but we really enjoyed having you. Obviously, Jackson, you bring, for national perspective, I love reading your articles. You mentioned your kind of influences and who you kind of try and emulate in the way that you write, but you have a very unique style that I really appreciate. You're very eloquent. You present things really well, and obviously you're well researched, well read on those things. So we appreciate your comments today, and you've reassured me, at least as a Bulls fan, that the analysis that Larry and I have been doing, and we know we've got some bias, but I kind of feel like, all right, I know this is bias. Like I know which is bias and which is my actual feelings on stuff if I really get down to it. And I feel like you've justified and provided a lot of confidence in our opinion. So we appreciate you coming on, and you guys should definitely follow Jackson Frank. And Jackson Frank, you've got thousands and thousands more followers than we do, anyways. But so no one's following you off here. But if you for some reason do not follow the legend Jackson Frank, please follow him on Twitter at @JackFrank_JJF. Check out his work at all the places we mentioned. Honestly, put him on notifications. This man's a legend. So thank you so much, Jackson. I'm sure Larro's will echo my sentiments as well.
Yeah, no, Jackson, man, look, brother, you're amazing, man. You're a shining star. Just keep doing what you're doing, man. Don't change. Keep doing what you're doing, and I already know, man, that things are gonna come bigger than they already are. And it like Chris said, if by chance there's nobody in here that follows, Jackson, I don't know what you're doing, but go ahead and follow him, please.
Well, I appreciate all the kind words from all of you, or the two of you. Really means a ton. Really just enjoying this. Like I feel really grateful to be able to write podcasts about the NBA as a living. I wrote that big article over Liberty Ballers last week, but it still does feel like a little doesn't quite always set in. But I appreciate the two of you having me on, and appreciate everyone in the comments for gassing me up. Definitely not deserved, but I'm happy to provide some insights. But yeah, I'll keep chugging out NBA content, whether it's Sixers. I'll be doing a lot more Sixers content this year. I'll have a bigger role at Liberty Ballers. I can't hint exactly what that means, but I'll have a bigger role coming up, so I'm excited for that. Which means a little less national coverage, which is a little bit of a bummer, but still be doing that as well. So if you like a lot of tweeting, sometimes obnoxious tweeting, go ahead and follow me. But I have enough followers for a lifetime, honestly. But I appreciate the two of you for having me on. I appreciate everyone for support, and just I'm excited for the Bulls this year. I am genuinely excited for every team in the NBA this year for different reasons, but the Bulls clearly had a very busy headline offseason. I'm excited to see how it works out, and excited to see and track the progress over the next 6 years. I guess we got to 2027, right? So excited to see how that works out. I guess I'll be old by then. Not. I can't say old. I'll be older.
You'll be an old fart like me, Larro. So exactly. All right, Bulls fans, we'll catch you guys next week. training camp's coming up at the end of this month. Things are in motion. The Bulls roster's set.
Can't wait.
I can't believe it. It's already here again. This has been a crazy pandemic experience so far, and the basketball has been really good, and there's more to come. So thanks, everyone, and we'll talk to you guys next week. See ya.
Peace.